The situation in Kalush is one which has developed over about 40 years production of plastic materials, giving rise to waste of especially the chemical called HCB, hexachlorobenzene, which is one of the so-called dirty dozen. Those 12 chemicals, which under the heading of United Nations and under so-called Stockholm Convention, is under international surveillance and control as far as it's possible. It's a chemical which is being distributed all over, and when it's released into the nature, it is running beyond control. We can use them in the Western European countries, but what we lose and miss out into the atmosphere or into the waters, we may re-find years after other places, up to the Arctic countries, Arctic areas. You can find them in ice bears, you can find them in birds and so on, living up there. They're brought there by the sea, or with the atmosphere, and they are practically indestructible. The first thing they did in Kalush was to collect the material in big dugouts and stores. But when these stores were not sufficiently protective against release into the environment, they had to try to dig them up again and having them brought to places where the chemicals could be destroyed by a destructive process, mostly by burning. They have managed, after much troubles, they have managed to have about, should I say, 80%, possibly a little more, but in that order, of these chemicals being brought out of the Kalush area and brought into Poland in big bags, so-called big bags, and stored there close to the Baltic Sea borders, with the purpose of having them incinerated into the Gdansk incineration plant. And this is the situation today. But the problem there is that the plant is not sufficiently technically developed to deal with such a difficult chemical as the HCB. So the risk of atmospheric or aquatic pollution is still there. Then they have, as far as I have learned, tried to solve some of the problems which they had, which had developed. That do that by digging up again, bringing some of the chemicals into the land and store them. But the storage in 20 miles inland in Gdansk has given them problems also with the risk of release into the Polish waterways. And the fear I personally have been confronted with is that the incineration plant in Gdansk was not sufficiently developed to do a proper job in burning and destroying the chemicals. It requires high temperatures, controlled feeding into the plant without too high speed, because it's necessary to keep the concentrations low, meaning that it will be a slow process before you can end up with a whole store.